Hello, hello. How? I don't know. But this is the first time this happens. Why? Okay, my editor can edit that. No problem. I'm nervous. I'm never nervous in the
Don't
interview.
be nervous. Don't be
I'm
nervous.
never nervous. This is Alive with Purpose with your host Laura Galdo, and today we have a very special guest. Special indeed. It's very close to my heart as I want the message for this video podcast to be not only messages of how to deal with your bodies, physically, mentally, emotionally, but also spiritually. And today we have Father Richard Vigoa as our special guest. How are you, Father? We're gonna
Doing
see
well. Thank you.
about your
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yes, let's hear about your trials and tribulations in your path as a priest and whatever you want to share with the audience. Always to lift the spirits, always to give them an idea of how it is that it's done when you go through obstacles and situations, always staying with faith and with positivism. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was raised in a very Catholic home. So I come from almost like cradle Catholic. We were always in the same pew on Sunday, every single Sunday at the noon mass. I was raised in Central Florida, and my parents really gave us a very strong foundation of the faith. And I always like to tell people that I know that I'm a priest today because of uh, marriage prep and the retreat cursillo, because my parents would go to mass maybe Christmas and Easter, if that. And their parents weren't really churchgoers either. But it was during their marriage prep that the priest, when they went to interview with the priest to say, well, we'd like to get married here. What do we have to do? And the priest really kind of said, okay, well, this is what you have to do, and started to walk with them and teach them about the faith and encourage them as part of the marriage prep to do this retreat that was Cursillo, which at the time had a lot of traction and people were very attracted to the Cursillo movement. And it changed their lives. And from that, they really gave their lives to the Lord, and they raised us in the faith. And as I said, we were always at church. And you talk a little bit about obstacles and trials and learning. And I think that that came to me very young in life because um, I had a very good childhood. I know you hear different people talk about the tragedies and the hardships of childhood. I didn't have that. I had a very beautiful childhood. My parents loved each other. I never saw them fight, not even one time. And I remember as an adult, I asked my mom later in life, did you guys ever even fought? Or I never saw you fight or anything. And she said, oh yeah, we would, but we would go to the bedroom, we would close the door and we would have our discussions, but we never wanted to do that in front of the
That,
kids.
that was smart of them. It was
Yeah,
here in Florida.
it was in Central Florida. So we had moved to Central Florida. But it was a beautiful childhood. And but when I was 14 years old, my father died in a car accident.
Oh,
And so from one day to the next, you don't see your father. And I think that age 14 is a very difficult time. I was 14, my sister was 13, and my little sister was 9 years old. So for a mother who was a very young mother to have now three children, raising them up, three, almost two teenagers and one a 9 year old, it was very difficult. So but what it taught us, I think, as family, and as I look back on it, was that the difficult days and the trials of that whole tragedy, how my mother was really able to continue with our lives the way they were.
huh.
School was important, academics was important, but the most important thing was that faith was the most important thing. And I remember after my father died, that first Sunday, we were still at Mass, and we would go to Mass every single Sunday. And so, um, what I learned through that was that, and even from a very young age, was that your relationship with the Lord is what's going to sustain you, what's going to help you through difficult times. And I remember we were very close to the priest who was in my parish. And so growing up, I always had a very healthy image of the priesthood. And he was very much a part of our lives. He would come over for dinner, and my mother would come and see him. And so um, that was one also a support system in our lives that really helped us through these trials and tribulations in a very difficult age, I would say.
So was this priest your role model perhaps to get into priesthood, or how did you get into that path?
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when I was like 9 years old, he said to me, he said, and I was an altar server, and I love to be around the altar and always serve. And I remember he says, "You should be a priest." And I said, "No, Father, no, thank you. That's not for me. I don't want to be a priest, you know." And I remember saying that, and um, I said, "What does he see in me that he thinks that I could be a priest?" And that always stayed in my mind, you know. But was he a role model? I would say yes, because later on in my life, when I was in the seminary and I was preparing to be a priest,
Mm.
I always said, when I become if I become a priest, I want to be like him, because he was always celebrating the mass. He was everywhere. He knew everybody. He was always constant in the parish. And he had a very good ministry of presence. And so he celebrated everything because there was only one priest in the parish. We lived in Central Florida. There were only two parishes, only two Catholic churches in my town. One was on the opposite side of town, and one was closer to us, but there was only one priest. And so he did everything. And I always saw that as a very good model of bringing the church community closer through that one
Mhm.
priest and that one message and that one vision that he had. So yeah.
So I'm still thinking of, I didn't know this about you, the story about your father, the past. Something similar happened to my husband's dad, by the way. So that must have been really, really tough, even though you just like went through it casually. But I know that it must have been something that marked your life forever. And moving forward, when you encounter in your priesthood families that go through these situations, how do you handle that with them, having been one of those that who went through something similar?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because in my role now, I deal with a lot of death in families, people who are sick or people who are in tragedies or accidents. And so I remember right now a family that I am very close to now, who lost their father last year, a year ago last year. And even though I lost my dad at 14, the losing of a parent is very difficult, and that stays with you.
Mm.
But I think that what has taught me in my life and how I dealt with it and how I've come to terms with it helps me to be able to counsel, to talk, give spiritual direction to someone who maybe an adult child who has now lost their parent, or even a young person who has lost their parent. So you're right. I think that it helps me in my ministry to be able to relate and be in solidarity with someone who has had a loss like this, because I can relate and I know what those feelings are. And when it comes to times for Father's Day, or it's time for his birthday, or for very, very big special events in your life that you don't have your parent, or maybe you lost both your parents. I had someone recently come see me, and her dad just died, and her mother had died years before, but now she was saying, for the first time in my life, I feel like an orphan. And that is something that she's coming to grips with, and those feelings. But ultimately, I think that for us to be of good sound mind and heart, and it is really, how do I have this relationship with the Lord, where the Lord is the most important thing in my life, and I can really come to the Lord with all of my pain, my heartache, and uh, to know that we have a God that's so loving, that's going to take care of us and walk with us during these very difficult times.
That's what I was going to ask you precisely, about how do you keep the faith in a situation like this, not only at a loss of a parent, but also in situations like these days nowadays with COVID. And I don't really want to talk too much about COVID and politics and what everybody's talking about, because it is a fact. But how do you, in terms of how does that relate to the faith, and how do you keep your faith in something like that?
Yeah, and that's a very good observation. What I tell my parishioners and people that I counsel with or give spiritual direction is that there has to be this encounter with the Lord. Because a person who doesn't have Jesus in their life or doesn't have that faith component in their lives, they're going to suffer and they're going to go through these moments very differently than someone who believes and someone who has faith and someone who has trust in the Lord. Someone who um, has no religion or has no sense of God, they're going to grieve and suffer in a different way.
Mhm.
The Christian, the person who is a believer, suffers and grieves in a way that they still have joy. And that may sound weird, but what happens is that because I know Christ and because I know that I have that support, I still can have joy because I am not like a non-believer. In my mind, in my heart, and what the Lord teaches me, what the church teaches me is that I wasn't made for this world. I was made for eternity. And so because I'm made for eternity, there is hope. There's a future. There is everything. Whereas someone who doesn't believe, someone who doesn't have the faith, there's real no hope. The hope is in maybe uh, perhaps even dying or not or numbing the pain or just being disconnected from that. But someone who has real faith and trust in the Lord Jesus, you can have joy.
That's a
And
very interesting point. Yeah, go ahead. Joy and sadness together. I never thought of it like that.
yeah, and see, because joy and happiness is totally different.
Mm,
So you can be happy, um, because what happens is happiness is moment to moment. You could be happy right now because you're having a great podcast and you feel great and you feel happy. The message is wonderful. You could be happy, but once the podcast is over, you get in your car and this just sadness and depression comes over you. Or you could be happy because your kids are home because they came for dinner, or you could be happy because you did a really good job on one of your presentations. But once that's over, it fades and you kind of go into despair, lack of hope, and your life is what happens is that your life becomes contingent on happiness in the sense that it's from moment to moment to moment, and it's not something that carries you through. Whereas joy, Christian joy, is I know who I am. I am the beloved son, the beloved daughter of the Lord, who loves me unconditionally, who supports me, who walks with me. But more importantly is I have a hope for the future, which is life with God in heaven, and to be able to see my loved ones that have died. That is this hope that fills me completely, that then brings me joy. And that joy carries me throughout the day, throughout my life. And it could be, I could be sitting in a funeral home at the saddest moment of my life, but deep down inside, I still have this joy that is because I know Jesus Christ and I don't feel alone. I don't feel abandoned. I don't. Now, there's people that are going to feel that even as Christians, but they need to be reminded of who they are as baptized sons and daughters of God.
Father, you're making me emotional, and that's not the purpose of the podcast. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So basically, we can say that happiness is temporary and joy is eternal.
Joy is eternal and it's transcendent. So it's beyond this world, it's beyond time and space. I wouldn't say happiness is temporary. I would say that happiness is momentarily. So it goes from moment to moment. And happiness can last. Um, you could be on vacation and reading a really good book under an umbrella and just say, this is a really happy moment.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get on the plane and you're going home back to work, you're a miserable person, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So how do we live that Christian joy? Well, really understanding what hope is. And Christian hope is what sets us apart from everybody else. Christian hope is what really allows us to be who we are, to be able to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, to be able to give witness, to be able to assist, to be able to go out and help those who are in need, but more importantly, to live in such a way that has other people attracted to the faith.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine your friends or family members, and that they know that you love Jesus and that you belong to the faith and that you go to church, but you're always mad and you're not nice and you maybe not say nice words and you just don't give a very good witness to the faith. No one's going to want to convert to the faith. No one's going to come to say, I want to know more about your religion, because if that's how you act, I don't want anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
But
You
if you really know joy and you live joy,
know.
let's say someone says, wow, you just lost your husband to a tragedy or to a sickness,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still such a beautiful person. Why is that?
Projects.
And
Yeah.
it projects. And then you say, well, because I know the Lord and I know Jesus Christ. And
Mm-hmm.
then a person's going to be able to say to you, I want that. I
Oh.
want that peace. I
Mm-hmm.
want that love. I want that assurance. I want to know more about who this Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
Because Christ asks us to be a witness to his love, to his peace, and to his security. So I think that that's where we're at. I think that if more people could understand what Christ offers you, um, and it has to be through this lived faith experience.
You know what? You're throwing words at me that I have so many questions specifically on the words, because usually is questions on the phrases or feedback on what the person says. But these words are so crucial that I've heard these words throughout my life and my career in journalism and coaching and education and all that. And let's just take one word. Let's just take the word hope that you just very wisely described in the faith and how you use it in the faith. But on an everyday life, you hear things like, don't say, oh, I hope I can do that. Say, I will do that. So how do you use the word hope from the Christian perspective to the coaching perspective or the live lessons perspective when you say I hope, which is given like a negative connotation? Oh, I hope I can have that. But it really, like, when you hope like that, that means that you might not get it, or you're not working hard enough to get it. So maybe the hope that you're talking about is more from the heart or for the soul, and the hope that I'm talking about in terms of on a daily basis. Can you tell me a little bit about that, because I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, and that is a very good point. Because we can say, I hope that the surgery that you're about to have is good. I hope that that you're able to have an encounter with Christ, or I hope that so hope is something that is beautiful. And what separates hope from other things is that hope, as I said earlier, is something that transcends. Okay, because we hope for evidence of things unseen. That's what we read in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It is our hope that we could live to the what God is calling us to be. I hope that I'm able to turn it around and to be more faithful to the Lord, that I can go to confession, that I can um but it doesn't diminish that. Almost like, well, it can't be done, or it's different than, oh, I hope this, almost like crossing your fingers. That's not what the
Right.
word, what the
Mhm.
what the meaning is. um
So it depends on how you use it, no? Like if you say, "Oh, I hope," or "I hope," with with faith, you know,
Right.
in the knowing that that's going to happen, just because you hope for it.
Exactly.
Mm.
That's exactly right. It's almost like saying, it's you could say that it's the promise of God that has made for us,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
Um, all of us humans, whether we believe or not, are all in the same boat, all of us,
Mm.
and we're in this together. But what makes Christians different is not that we're some sub species within a human race, but rather that we have been given, and this is something that Pope Benedict XVI, our emeritus Pope, says, that we have a certitude about God. And what that means is that, as I said earlier, this promise of eternal life that Jesus gives us, that Christian certitude, and what that certitude is called faith. And so we can say that faith for all of us as Christians is the knowledge of of God,
Hmm.
and God and his promises that he makes through Jesus Christ, which then makes hope possible because we then have a personal relationship with Christ.
So it is
You
in
know,
having that personal relationship that you actually see hope in a different light.
what's that again? I'm sorry.
It is in that personal relationship that you have with Jesus. It's how you see hope in a
Yeah,
different
exactly.
in a different.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Like in First Peter, in the book of First Peter, it says that always be ready to give an example or an explanation to anyone who asks for you for a reason for your hope. Basically, something that we had already been talking about earlier, of how to someone to say, well, why are you so hopeful?
Hmm.
Why are you so engaged or joyful? Well, First Peter says you got to be always ready to defend your faith, to tell people why is it that you're so hopeful? Why?
Hmm.
Because I have this promise of eternal life with Christ in heaven.
Well, and are you hopeful?
I am very
Hopeful
hopeful.
of this world, of these people, of
Yeah, I am. I am. I think that we need to be hopeful people. I think that we always need to take whatever situation we have and turn, we need to live our lives differently. We need to see the world differently. We need to see every situation differently, because that's who we're called to be as Christians. I remember Ronald Reagan, who was a president of the United States, and he was a very humble man. He knew that surrounding himself by very brilliant people, he could do a very good job. And whenever someone would commend him, or say, wow, that was so wonderful, he would always say, but it's because of the people that I have around me. It's because of this person, or it's because of that person. But he had this ability to always look at the situation and always look to the positive, or look to what God provides. Now, I don't know much about what his faith life was about, but in contrast to maybe like a President Nixon, where President Reagan, if you would ask him something about, let's say, they'd say, but you didn't go to an Ivy League school, or you didn't go to an elite school. And President Reagan would probably say something that, yeah, you're right, I didn't. But that taught me to be an excellent, and to be able to know people, and to learn the world, and to, he would give it a very a rich understanding of how the world taught him.
Mhm.
Whereas if you ask that question maybe to someone like a Richard Nixon, he would have said, if someone asked him, you didn't go to an elite school, he would have probably said something like, yeah, you're right, and that's why I had to fight, and it was horrible, and I didn't get the opportunities that I was entitled to, so I had to fight my way. So that's the two different outlooks in life of, how can I be hopeful? How can I be positive? How can I look to a future that God desires for me? I think that God God allows things, I think, that so for us to learn and to better ourselves, and to look to the future, and to have that balance in our lives, to have that opportunity of conversion, to look to the other, to look at the situation, say, Lord, how can I learn from this? How can I be better? How can I? So those are moments of grace where the Lord touches us.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's all about me, and I have this illusion of grandeur where I'm the one that can solve everything and I'm in control, and if it's only because of my good work and my good intentions and the energy that I put around it, if that's how I think, well, you're going to be a miserable person, because through your own works you're not going to accomplish much, but it is only through God's grace that we believe that we accomplish a lot.
So you have given us right now again two more lessons, because this is all full of lessons, and the idea is for the audience to catch these lessons that my, the guests are giving. And one is, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Like in the case of Reagan or Nixon, the example that you were giving. So it's
Yeah,
probably the same situation. Is how you handle something. It's not what you have in your hands, what is how you handle it. So that's something that is really important too. And my mother-in-law always used to tell me that it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. I
yeah,
remember her saying that. And the other one is that as long as you acknowledge the people around us, and you know that life is not only about you, it's about all of those that make the whole, the whole pie together with the ingredients. And then you can enjoy faith and joy and happiness and all this together, because it's not you being selfish, it's also acknowledging others.
yeah,
I get
and
that right? Or say,
yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's and Maya Angelou said once that people, when they're around you or at a dinner party or at a gathering, may not remember what you said or some of the points that you were so intelligent with and stuff. They may not remember that, but they're going to remember how you made them feel.
yes, that's one of her 10 main points
Is
of
that one of our main 10 points? So I think that that is true in Christianity. I think that being able to witness to the faith, and for people to say, wow, this person loves Jesus.
Mhm.
This person follows the Lord. This person's a good Catholic. This person um, really, this person, because of their actions, because of their witness, wants me, it compels me to be better, and want to know the Lord in a deeper way.
And yeah, you can say that, you can feel hopeful, you can have faith, but I hear a lot of people saying, I don't know where my peace is. I don't have peace. I cannot find peace. What do you have to say about that, which you mentioned earlier? Tell me a little bit about peace, and what is the meaning of peace, and how can we feel peaceful inside,
Yeah,
despite it all,
I
despite everything that's happening, despite whatever happens to you?
well, I think that peace comes from wanting to control everything. Peace,
Hmm.
the lack of peace is because I feel that I am the designer. I am the one who's in control of everything. And so because I can't control it, or because I don't have this, or because I don't have, it robs me of peace. Even in a family situation, or even in a difficulty with a spouse, or with a child, or in friendship, or in business, I'm robbed of peace when I think that I can control everything. But when I'm able to be humble, when I'm able to let go of the ego, and allow myself to learn from something, to learn from a situation, and to really surrender and say, Lord, teach me. I am your student. I am your disciple. How do I understand this situation, or what's going on in my life, or even what's going on in the world? It's about trust and surrender to that God has a plan, and I'm here to do his will. If I understand that God is the creator and I am his creature, then it's different than the person who kind of says, well, I can create whatever it is. I'm going to go out in the world and I can do what I need to do. Well, you're setting up yourself up to fail, because you will run into moments where you're not going to have peace, where you're going to have anxiety and moments of despair. But true peace, lasting peace, is centered on surrender, giving it completely to the Lord, trying to do the will of God, and then trusting that God has a plan, God has a word for you, God has a desire for you, but how can I be faithful to that? And when you come to the Lord and you come to prayer in the morning, and you either in the chapel or in the Blessed Sacrament, or even at home in your prayer space, or in the car, and you're praying a rosary, and you say, I surrender to you, Lord. And I desire that you just fill me with your peace. Because once you understand that it's someone else that's in control, that allows for peace then to reign in your heart.
I thank you for that, because I want to be candid with the audience. That's the reason why I asked about peace, is because yes, I've heard people saying I'm lacking peace, but that has happened to me personally many times.
It happens to all of us. Yeah.
And I'm like, and I feel desperate, and I have felt desperate. Where I say I'm not having a good moment, I cannot find the peace, and I almost like physically want to like grab it from my heart and go inside me and try to find it. And everything might all seem fine, with the family, with the career, whatever, but I still have that strong feeling inside that something is missing, and it has to do with peace. So that's why I asked you that question also about peace. So how does one detect that, identify that that's happening, and how do you get out of it?
Yeah, and the thing is, at once, and that's a good detector. I mean, I think that is something that is built in us, that is like almost like red flags, or the bell is going off, that something is off, something's not wrong, right? I mean, and have you ever been like maybe in the car driving, or maybe washing dishes, or out for a walk, and you can sense that something's wrong?
Yes.
What's going on? I don't get it. That like something, there's an uneasiness. Well, what that is that in the heart there's unresolved um, situations, conflicts that you still haven't brought to the Lord for resolution, or you haven't brought to the Lord for healing. And so those are good indications that if you're not having peace, if you're not sleeping, well, then there's a problem, and needs to be addressed. And only Christ can heal at the root of what the problem is. But if you yourself don't know what that problem is, then it's going to take you a while, because you have to have a great self-awareness to kind of figure out, well, what is the problem? And when you sit in silence, and you say, Lord, reveal it to me, reveal what it is. I had a woman who we did this exercise together, and she realized, after sitting in prayer and kind of doing a self-awareness exercise, that it was a word that her daughter-in-law had given to her, saying that it was kind of an off. She didn't really say that she was heavy and uh, like unkept, but it was almost like, but that's how she perceived it. And so just those two small words just unsettled her. And she didn't know, and she had forgotten about it, and she didn't know that she needed healing from that. And so she brought it to the Lord. She brought it to confession, and she was able to liberate herself from that. And that's a good it's a good lesson for us, that when we have burdens, when we have situations, maybe ourselves, we have acted out against someone, or we've acted rudely or impatient, whatever it is, that we bring those things to confession, and the Lord can then heal that, or take that away, and it brings that inner peace that you've been talking about.
So you mentioned anxiety before briefly, and so would you say that the lack of peace is a direct road to anxiety?
Yeah, and I think that anxiety will take away the peace. Anxiety is not having control. Again, I can't control this situation, so it brings me anxiety. I want to control it. I want to be in charge. I want to be able to have magic powers to kind of do my magic wand and do it, and so, yeah, and all that craziness. And so what happens is that, because I want control, I don't have control, I don't know how to control it, it gives me anxiety. Whereas if I can give it to the Lord, I can surrender. It is what it is. One, I can't change the past. I can only change my behavior right now, today, moving forward. But how do I learn the tools to be effective and forget about what's happened in the past through going through confession, to be able to heal that and reconcile that, and then move forward as someone who's productive, someone who is conscious of not hurting, of keeping the commandments, of living a radical call to love, even when in the most difficult moments in your life, maybe a difficult marriage or a difficult child that you have in your home, or even a difficult workplace. How do I look at that and grow and give it to the Lord? So not having control is what gives us anxiety. If we can only learn that and say, I need to give up that, I need to surrender that, then the anxiety starts to subside and peace begins to reign in your heart.
Yeah, see, it's all connected. All these
Yeah,
things.
it's all connected.
It's amazing
All
how
connected.
it's all connected. I wanted to ask you because a lot of people have this, doubt about belief, or they fluctuate between belief and faith. What can you say about belief and faith?
Well, they're both
Faith
connected.
different.
They're both connected. Belief and faith are, I choose to believe, and so therefore I have faith. Um, Faith is not certitude, because if it was certitude, then it would be a fact. It would be something that I don't have to have faith for. I believe, therefore I have faith. Let's say, in one of the Catholic dogmas, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, who is the second person in the Trinity. That is something that I believe. I have faith in what I believe, and it helps me in my relationship with the Lord. It helps me to have a concrete, tangible encounter and personal relationship with Jesus Christ, meaning that Jesus Christ is not a philosophy, it's not a set of rules, it's not this nice guy who went around doing nice things, but it is, I believe through the core of my heart that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, who came to die for me and for my sins, who I now have this personal relationship. Because I believe this, then my faith allows me to live my life. I am a faithful person. I am filled with faith. And what that means is that I live my life, everything that I do, the way that I conduct my life is through faith. Why? Because I believe in these core truths, Jesus Christ being truth with a capital T. I believe this truth, therefore I have faith. I have faith in the resurrection. I have faith in the afterlife. I have faith that I can be the priest or the man or the woman or whomever that God is calling me to be.
You're throwing some philosophical logic there, and that was one
Yeah,
of
and I don't want to get too heavy. I want
no,
to keep
that
it
was
light.
one of my favorite subjects. Let me
I
tell
want
you,
to keep it light though.
I love logic. So you're saying that so X, therefore Y. Basically, that's the formula you're giving me. So would you say so you can believe but not necessarily have faith, or can you have faith and not really believe, or they have to go intertwine with each other? Otherwise, one cannot exist without the other.
Well, that's a good point. I think that they have to go together, but I think there comes a time, and everyone reaches it at a different point. Some people are more uh, analytical, some people are more academic, some people are more intellectual, some people are more on emotions. And so I first have faith because I had an encounter at a retreat, or I had an encounter through a talk, and so I immediately have faith. And then I know it to be a truth, but I didn't come to believe it until I I came to believe it because of an emotion or because of an encounter, or someone else may be reading a book by Chesterton, or somebody a philosophical book or something, and I came to know it through reason, and that is something that nourished my faith. But it is two separate uh,
Ideas or
or two separate um well, I can't, it doesn't come to my mind now, but they're both together, and it happens, it can happen one or the other, different and separately.
So you can believe without seeing something, without experimenting something or
Right.
experiencing something.
Very much so. Yeah,
Okay. And therefore you have faith,
exactly. It leads you to faith.
and it leads you to faith. Wow, this is beautiful. So what is eternity for you? Or is there such thing as eternity?
Well, yeah, eternity is, the promise that Jesus makes to us. He says that, those who believe in me will have life and have it to the fullest, and live with me for all eternity. And that's what someone would say, well, that's what heaven is, eternity. We have to remember that God exists outside of time and space, that we humans, the earth, is set in motion inside of time and space.
So we have
God,
a past, present, and future. That's what you remember.
right. So it's linear, it's past, present, and future, where God doesn't work in that. God works outside of time and space. And so as Christians, that is where our hope comes from. Our hope is in being able to live with God for all eternity, that this world is not just this, and that it ends and you're put into a box, into the earth, and that's it, goodbye, it was wonderful, no more. No, that's not my citizenship is in heaven. I was made for heaven. I was made for more. I was made to live with God for all eternity, not just to live and die, but I was made to live and to know him, to love him, and to serve him, so that I can serve him in this life and in the next. And that's from the Baltimore Catechism. You're probably too young, but when the Baltimore when we had the Baltimore Catechism, the students would memorize the catechism. That's how you got to know the faith. And so one of the first questions is, for why were you created? And we were created by God to love him and serve him in this life and the next being eternity. And so that's our purpose. Our purpose is not for this life, but for the next, to do everything that we can to get it right. We only get one chance at it. And so we have to do everything that we can to be able to make sure that we have a life with God for all eternity.
It seems like you're in my head. I have a question regarding that. Go ahead, don't worry. Your phone. That's okay. It's okay. People know that we are here working from home, from your office, and these things happen.
Oh, I love it. I think it's and that's what, when I do my own podcast or interviews, I don't like it to be so, it's got to be organic. And I think you're doing that, where it's just where's the spirit leading us?
Yeah, I'm not going to edit this part. You had a that's fine. Hey. No problem. But speaking of, so God made us so that we can take advantage of this life, and that's all we have. So is that what you're saying, that we only have one chance? What do you say to those people that say, okay, so then why do we die? So you made us to enjoy this life, number one. So why do we have to die? And number two, so we really don't get another chance?
No second chance. And that's the scary part. And that's something that a lot of people don't really understand. I mean, there's a camp, there's people that think that, don't worry, everything in the end just works itself out, and that everybody goes to heaven. I don't think so. I think that Jesus speaks very clearly in the Gospels, saying that you need to come to him, and you need to know him, and to love him, and to serve him, and that there are actions in our lives that can separate us from his love. And I think that that's what hell is. I think that hell is a place where it is it's diminished of God's love. There is no love in that place. And so what a horrible place. And so God really allows us this opportunity to live our lives, and our whole purpose in life is to love him.
Okay.
And that's something different than what people would say, because some people it's like, no, I came to be successful. I came to have as much money as I can, and to acquire as much things as I could, and to raise my kids, and for them, and then that's it. When I die, I leave a legacy. But that's not what God intended. God intends us to give us this opportunity to be born, and to know him, to love him, and to serve him. And that's what the purpose is. And that's what Christ shows us in the way that he lived his life. His he came to do the will of the Father. And what was the will of the Father? Was to die for our sins, to be able to redeem us as a as our Christ, as our Messiah. Now, you did mention something about is this it, or living life to the fullest. Saint Irenaeus says that the greatest glory of God and the greatest joy of God is to see a human being fully alive. And what does that mean? And that means that when we are um, out and about, and when we're living our lives, that we're fully alive, that we can't be afraid of every little thing. We can't be afraid, oh, if I do this, I'm not going to go to heaven. Or if I do, no, it has to be a lived experience with God. It has to be where I'm conscious of where I'm going. My citizenship is in heaven. So everything that I do is God is first in my life. God is first in my marriage. God is first in my children. God is first in my business. God is first in everything. And that begins to shape who I am and how I live my life and how I give witness to Jesus Christ.
So what happens when we get to heaven? It's over, or do we have another job out there?
Well, I think that that's a question I don't think anybody can answer. I think that no one has really gone to heaven and come back and said, hey
Tell us.
guys, this is what it's like. But
Huh?
I do think that it is such a wonderful place, and it was made for us to just enjoy the glory and glorying God for the rest of our lives. And I don't know if you've seen like these there's something on Netflix now, but all these people who have had near death experiences, or who have died and come back to
The
life.
new, the new series about reincarnation.
Right. So there's like all of these, well, not reincarnate. I don't know if it's reincarnation, but there's been so many documented people who have had these and the reason why I mention this is only that every person who's had this kind of near death experience
Mhm.
has never wanted to come back.
That's one of the episodes of that series. They're putting together now, I believe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it kind of shows us a little bit about, yeah, that heaven exists, that God exists, and that every single person who's had this near death experience has never wanted to come back, because of the immense
Light and
light and
light.
joy that they experience being on the other side.
So circling around that idea of science, because we're like on the bottom line. I mean, there's a fine line between this and science. What do you think about that? So you think that actually people can see a light, and they are such thing as out of body experience or near death experience?
I do. I really do believe that. I believe that heaven is real. I believe that people do have near death experiences. I think that the Lord allows this to be able to say to that person, "Hey, your mission is not over. You got to go back, but you've gotten a taste of what's to come, and hopefully you can live your life a little bit differently. I'm giving you an opportunity to go back and change your life, and to do it better, and to follow me, to love me, and to serve me, so that you can bring others to know me." So I think that person kind of gets to understand that life is not about just success or things and material things, but that life is about union with God. And perhaps these people are getting a second opportunity to
Yeah,
redo their lives.
as opposed to others who that don't get that opportunity.
Right. And some people don't get that opportunity. So How can we, and that goes to the point that all of us should be proclaiming the gospels and teaching people about what heaven is all about, and what awaits us.
Yeah, this is a big subject for another podcast because
Yeah, exactly.
I could talk about this. And so then heaven, conclusion, heaven is full of beautiful souls, let's just say, and it's endless because if nobody comes back, then so many people going up there. There's that's the it's like a big party up there then.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the in I think that in the Gospels it tells us that we cannot imagine what God has in store for us. It's just our brains are too
Conditioned to.
well, they're too small in the sense that it doesn't have the capacity to really truly understand all of who God is and what awaits us.
Mhm. Wow, thank you. This has been amazing, more than I expected, and I knew it was going to be good. So, but let me just before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests to please give some actionable tips to my audience, of how they can improve in their life, or grow personally, professionally, and spiritually. Now, in your case, what are some of the tips that you want to leave, some takeaway for the audience?
Well, that's a good, what I would do as a takeaway, I would just say that if you don't have a faith component in your life, to get one. If you're looking for a new way of living, if you're looking for joy, if you're looking for purpose and a direction in your life, give faith component a chance. Most especially if you come to know Jesus Christ in a personal way, to really have an encounter with the Lord, to change your life completely, and to live that. I think that you're going to see that your life changes for the better, and it's a life that you're going to live to the fullest. And all of us live with sort of a void in our lives, and we have this emptiness perhaps, and the only thing that can fill that void is Jesus Christ. And once we come to know that and we accept it, our life begins to live to the fullest.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I had a whole set of questions here, as you know, and I'm like, whatever, forget about that. Like this is like amazing.
The
Nothing.
Holy Spirit had a better the Holy Spirit had other plans.
Absolutely, I can feel it. Like my head was like, oh my God, I have to ask this, I have to ask that. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where can they go
So
pray with you, see you?
yeah, so you can Google St. Augustine Church Miami, St. Augustine Church Miami, and go on our website, go on our YouTube page, follow us on social media. A lot of great things are happening. It's a church community that is fully alive, on fire for Christ, and come be part of our community. You can be part of the online community, or come in person here in the heart of Coral Gables, right across the street from the University of Miami. So
No, thank you. And I would later I'm going to talk to you about how perhaps I can contribute to the to the churchgoers, and because I
thank
would
you.
love to be involved in anything
I
possible.
appreciate that.
I'm so thankful that yeah, I really like to go see and talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well,
Thank
this has been fun. So thank you
yeah,
so much for inviting me.
thank you so much. God bless you, Father. Thank
All
you. I
right.
appreciate it.
God
Bye.
bless. Have a beautiful day.
Have a
Bye.
beautiful day. Bye.
Bye.